JSON data, and finally create a cool, useful JSON-driven web application. And here's the finished product of what you'll be learning how to create. What I did was set it up for every 10 seconds. It requests 4 new random items out of your database, and it'll repopulate this little data box that you have here on your web page. So every 10 seconds, when the user's scanning your page, you'll see a little box that's just magically popping new data in and out of it randomly from your database in real time without refresh. To keep everything nice and in line, we are going to begin this lesson with the same exact files that we left off with in lesson number 6. If you have not seen all the previous JSON tutorials number 1 through 6, you'll probably have a little bit of difficulty fully understanding what we're about to do in this video lesson. So I'd like you to right-click JSON tutorial number 6 HTML and open that in your favorite HTML editor. Now I want you to go to File, Open, JSON Gallery Data.php. These are the 2 files that we left off with in the last lesson. Now save JSON Gallery Data.php, save as, instead of JSON Gallery Data, let's call it JSON_MySQL Data. Save, and then you can close JSON Gallery Data.php, because you'll want to save that one just for referencing later on. And JSON tutorial number 6.html, you want to save that one as JSON tutorial 7. Save. Then you can close JSON tutorial 6.html. So what we'll do is begin with JSON MySQL Data.php. First thing I'm going to do is remove everything that we're not going to be using. So we're going to have a posted variable coming in called limit from our HTML file. It's going to be posted to this script. So we can just call that limit. The JSON data variable, where it begins, we have to keep that in place for the opening curly brace. The dir variable, that can go away. The dir handle, that can go away. We'll keep the I, and this whole while loop can go away. But you want to keep that line that says JSON data dot equals, where it's compounding different little objects within the JSON data variable. Keep that line, but remove everything else. Remove the while loop and those 2 closing curly braces there after the JSON data variable. Then you can remove the closed dir. You don't need that anymore. And we'll keep that little chop in place just to reference it. Now the first thing you want to do in the script is right under the header, we want to put an if condition statement. And that if condition statement reads, if is set posted variable of limit. That's going to be posted from our application to this script. So if and only if it's posted to this script do we want this script to run. The first thing we do is clean or filter this posted limit variable. You're going to use anything in a MySQL query, and if it's a posted variable, a get variable, any kind of variable coming across headers, you want to make sure that you filter all that information. So this break replace function does that. It uses a regular expression to filter out everything you don't want. So you can see my regular expression is set up to filter everything but numbers. If I wanted to allow spaces, I would put a space there. If I wanted to allow letters, I would put A through Z. If I wanted all uppercase letters too, I would put a little I right here in the end. But since I don't want letters, I can remove that I can remove these letters here, and remove the space, because the limit is just a number. Now for now, don't even worry about this data that's under your if condition, because everything that you're going to be putting in the script is going to be inside of this if condition statement. And we'll be grabbing this as we need it to put it up within that if condition. So the very next line within that if condition, after you filter the limit variable that's being posted to this script, you're going to put a require once function, which is going to be referencing your database connection file. Then we can take this I, which is our iterator variable, Control X, and we're going to place it right under the require once line. Then we're going to take this JSON data variable we have here, Control X, and we're going to put that under the I. So this is where your JSON data variable begins. And this limit, we can remove that since we already have it being cleaned up top here. Now these 2 last lines here at the bottom, Control X, we're going to put them up in the if condition as well. Those are the actual last 2 lines of your script within the if condition, because you'll be closing that JSON data object with its closing curly brace there. That's the last thing you do, and then you echo all the JSON data back to JavaScript. Now right here between those two things is where you want to query your database and make a little while loop that's going to pump out many items that you want. So what I'm going to do now is put a very basic MySQL query in place and its resulting while loop. You can see that we have that in place right now, and let me explain those lines to you just in case you don't know what's going on here. First thing we do is set up a string. This is just a string variable that is our SQL syntax. That's really the SQL syntax that I'm going to have in my query. It's saying select all from table name. You put your table name there in place of where I have the word table name. And then we say order by rand, which is rand is a SQL function that'll allow you to choose random things out of the database, random items. And we limit by the limit number. And the limit number is going to be posted from our Ajax to this PHP script, and that's going to be an integer. It can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 1,000, whatever you want. And I think I'm going to use the number 4 when I create my script. So this will read select all from whatever table that you want, order by rand limit 4. But like I said, this limit's going to be a dynamic variable coming into the script. In the next line, I actually execute the query using the MySQL query function, and I sync in my SQL string right here. And then I just say, or die, MySQL error, just in case any syntax is wrong or any errors occur, my script will die, and the MySQL error will be printed onto the screen, so my dumb butt can see what I did wrong. Then you simply use MySQL fetch array, which will give you a resulting array in this row variable, and you can while loop over that array. So you can compound this JSON data variable with a lot of items that come pouring out of your database. So like I said, this is a pretty standard MySQL query and a very basic MySQL while loop result set. So what we'll do is take this last line that we have here, Control X, and we'll put it up in place where it needs to go. Right here is the last line inside the while loop. So you're compounding all of this data. But we want this to be structured a little bit different. This is structured for our image gallery that we created in the previous lesson. So we just have to make it say different things. We'll say article, since this is going to be grabbing articles, in my case. It can grab any items you want from any database you want. So here, I++ makes this I that equals 0 in the beginning of the script. I++ makes it increment by 1 each time the loop passes. So the first pass of the loop, this I is going to be a 1. The first pass of the loop, the first little object in the JSON data variable is going to be article 1. Second item passes through the loop, it'll be article 2, article 3, and that is the property for the object. So on the right side of our colon, where we have to have the value for that property, we have a nested object. And then after that little nested object, we have to make sure that we put a comma. So I'm going to send article, and then in the nested object, we have 3 different properties and their values. So you have 3 different key value pairs in there. The first one is going to be ID. The second one is going to be title of the article. The third one is going to be creation date. So for short, I'll just make it CD. You see my CD variable is right here. So let's just change file to the CD variable, which is the creation date coming out of the database. Title, to make sure we replace that here. And then ID to go here. So that'll be the article ID, the article's title, and then the article's creation date. Now, before your last 2 little lines here, the one that closes up the JSON formatted data, and your echo, to echo everything back to Ajax, you want to put one more line, which you'll either want to chop this last comma off of the last item that comes through the loop, because you can't have a trailing comma on the last object within your JSON formatted data. So you have to actually chop that off. So you could either do this, like we did in the last tutorial, where we used the chop function in PHP, and all that did is take just the very last comma off of the end of the last little nested object within the data format. So you can either do that, or I'll show you something new in this lesson. We're going to send some arbitrary data back. So along with all of those deeply nested inner article items there, we're going to have some arbitrary data that also gets sent within that data object, but will be separate from all of the other little nested objects within there. So in my case, I'll have 4 of these little article 1, 2, 3, 4, and their ID, title, and CD. I'll have 4 sets of those things, and then I'll have 1 set at the bottom because it's not inside of the while loop. I'll have 1 set at the bottom with a property of arbitrary. That means arbitrary data. You can name that anything you want, and I'll show you how to scoop it up in your JavaScript when this data is returned to Ajax. So within this little nested object, all I did was I put the item count, which will be I. So after your while loop runs, however many items came out of that loop, that's what I will represent at the end of the looping process. So if the 10 items come through the loop, this will return item count 10. And then we'll also return the get date. And I'm just showing you how to send random, arbitrary crap data that you might just want to send along with the data request that you can scoop up separately from everything that's within this loop. Okay, so let's take these lines. We don't need them anymore. And I think that is everything. So that is what your completed PHP script should look like. That's JSON mysql data.php, which the Ajax within our HTML file is going to be calling. And we're going to use time to request this time. Okay, since we're done in this side of things, let's mosey on over to JSON tutorial 7.html. And we're going to change what we need to change in here now. And it's not going to be very much at all. We're going to go quick. Now the first thing is we're not going to have all this crap in here like we had for the photo gallery, because the photo gallery needed a little more CSS than we're going to need. We're just going to need this one rule that is div ID data box. And then we just set up the data box any way we want. Now scroll down to your HTML, and where you have all of these things, just get rid of everything until you got one div there. And we'll save that script line. This div, change the data box. And right before that div data box, we're going to put this H2 heading. And now we're going to change Ajax JSON gallery to Ajax JSON data function. And we're not going to send any arguments through. You guys already learned how to send dynamic arguments through your functions. So Ajax JSON data is the name of the function that should be here in the JavaScript. So change that to Ajax JSON data and remove the folder argument. Now you can remove the picture frame reference, and let's change this to the data box reference. Let's grab the ID of that data box, and we're going to put it right here. Var data box, get element by ID data box. And just like before, we established our XML HTTP request object as a variable called HR. And we run the open method on that object. The first parameter is post. Second parameter is the script that we want to use, the PHP script that's going to be feeding back our data. And that one is JSON mysql data. So we change gallery to mysql. And that is all you have to change there. Go down and leave all of that alone. And actually we can scoop up the arbitrary data by, I think we can use arbitrary right here. Let's see if that works. Let's see what we need to grab inside of arbitrary. Here's arbitrary. It's coming back from the PHP. And inside of that object is another nested object with 2 pieces of data in it, item count and return time. So let's just get the return time. Control C, go back into your HTML file. So you want data.arbitrary.return time. And we're going to try to put that in a different HTML element. I'll put a new element down here in the HTML. So we'll have data box. Right under data box, we're going to have arbitrary box. So since we're adding that, let's go ahead and make a reference for that right here under data box. Make sure it has the proper ID right there and right there. So when the data comes back through the Ajax request, instead of targeting the picture frame with the data, we're going to target the arbitrary box and its inner HTML property. And what we're going to do is just pop in the value. We don't need all that stuff. We're just going to pop in the value of the return time. And that gets generated, you can see here in PHP using the PHP getDate function. Remember, D stands for data. That's the data object, the JSON data object that comes back. And all of this was fully discussed in the previous lessons. I'm not going to go over things over and over again for people who are not paying attention to the whole series. So you get lost in the home. Now, instead of thumbnail box.inner HTML, you want data box right here to always empty time a new request is being made. Remember, I said we're going to have timed requests. So each time more data is being requested in, we're going to empty the box out. Now this for loop is going to stay just like it is. It's going to have variable object in data. And then each time you want to grab something, all you have to do is put the data object there, and then the object variable goes inside of the square brackets right next to it. And then you can dig inside for title. Remember, in our PHP script, we have in the objects coming back, each article has ID, title, and CD, which is creation date. So this little if condition just makes sure that it's going to be one of those objects in the PHP, and the arbitrary data won't be accessed with this loop because of this if condition saying that it has to have a title property in order for the loop to add it to the inner HTML of data box. So right here, make sure this says data box, and what we'll do is just throw in a paragraph. Yeah, so instead of doing all of that, we're going to throw in two paragraphs, one on top of the other. So one for the title and one for the creation date. I'll show you guys how to format this a little bit smarter after we run our initial test in the browser live in the web server. Now down here where you're sending the dynamic folder variable in the last lesson, you can remove that dynamic variable there, and we're going to put the name of this key value pair being sent is limit. That's the variable that we want, and the value is going to be 4. And you can put any number that you want. If you want 10 random items, then you put 10 there. I just want 4. Each time the request happens, I want 4 items. Now, right after your HR send method, you want to make sure this says data box because there is no more thumbnail box, remember? Okay, now the very last line is right under the data box inner HTML requesting ... that we put each time the request happens. We're going to put a new timer variable here. And actually, let's initialize this outside above. Let's put var my timer and then semicolon. So that'll initialize that variable there, and then we're using it here. So the my timer variable is equal to the set timeout method. The set timeout method allows you to execute code after a certain amount of time. That time in this case is 10 seconds. If you wanted that 1 second, you'd make that 1,000. Since I want 10 seconds, 10,000. Those are milliseconds. So each 10 seconds, I'm going to fire off Ajax JSON data function, which is the name of our function here. So basically, this function is now set to loop on itself every 10 seconds, and it'll execute immediately the first time. So after the first time, it executes immediately, then it'll wait 10 seconds, and then 10 seconds after that, 10 seconds after that. And that's how the requests will just roll on, and it'll keep getting random data upon each request. So when we run this script with our other script, our PHP script, we're going to have some data come in, and now just temporarily we're going to be throwing in 2 paragraphs. One paragraph is going to hold each title, the next paragraph will hold each creation date. So we should have basically 8 paragraphs because I wanted 4 items. Now down here, function picture frame, you don't need that at all. Just get rid of that completely. And I think that's it. Let's give this a test run. Okay, now you want to go to your live web server online. Make sure you FTP both the PHP script and your HTML file. You go to your live web server online. I'm going to be tapping into the articles at World of Webcraft. So you can see my articles came flying in 4 each time, and then every 10 seconds it says requesting very quickly. Then it brings in 4 new random articles, so you can see the article titles there and the article dates right under them. And right here in our script we have title and creation date within paragraph tags, so you can see how that's structured exactly. And we have an array coming back as our return time. So just for testing, let's make that say, what do we have here? Item count. Because this is giving us an array back. So I'm going to show you how to break that down just to get the timestamp. So here, instead of return time, let's put item count. And we should get 4 back. So re-FTP JSON tutorial 7.html. See the results you get by checking out item count. So if I refresh the page, see, it says 4. So I'm successfully getting my arbitrary data back from within this little nested arbitrary data object. And you can see we're also able to loop over the many objects that are deeply nested within that JSON data coming back. So you can target it directly like this, or you can loop through things. Now what I'm going to do is make each one put out its own paragraph, so we can remove this p tag and this closing p tag. So you have